Hey, it's Guy here. Welcome to Off My Bridge. What a response from you. My goodness, we've got a full crew as far as I'm concerned. Some amazing crew suggestions have come through from a couple of weeks ago, and I am meeting them all, and you're meeting them all today in this video as we talk about the idea of supporting crew or supporting cast within Star Trek Adventures 2. Now, the supporting cast idea is genius. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's genius. It's a wonderful, wonderful idea. And if you agree with me, if you do think it's a great idea, hit that like button. That helps us and it helps the channel. Why do I like it? Here are eight reasons why I like it. Number one, well, when your main character has got nothing to do, a supporting character which you create gives you something to do. It involves you in the scene. So why wouldn't you want to do something like this? Especially in Star Trek, where if you have created the scientist and it's a firefight that's going on, yeah, sure, you can participate, but you're not very good at it. Whereas if you create a supporting cast character who happens to be, I don't know, a security officer, well then bingo, suddenly you're participating in the fight, whilst your scientist is doing sciencey stuff elsewhere. Number two, it's all about splitting the party. Splitting the party in Star Trek is almost a requirement. When you look at most of the TV series and the films that have ever been made on Star Trek, there are always two teams running parallel with each other. Someone's doing this and someone's doing that. Captain Picard's going to Captain Picard Day and is judging science competitions. Meanwhile, Data and Geordi are battling a sentient computer program, and the two almost never meet. Sometimes they don't meet and then they come together and we realize that they are connected in some shape, form, or fashion, and sometimes they're just not. They're just random things that happen. Number three, it fills in the gaps. If you only have 2 or 3 players and you're trying to run a Galaxy-class starship, well, with 3 players, you've got the captain, you've got helm or tactical, you've got science or operations. Where's your chief engineer? Where's your chief medical officer? All of those other roles you can now fill with SPCs. Rather than the DM being overloaded with having to come up with 1,000 NPCs to fill this ship. Number 4, and this one I feel is not highlighted enough in the rulebook, and we don't think about it. It makes you a better player. Why? SPCs, supporting player character, SPCs are all about creating a character that is not the same character as the one that you have already created. If you created a doctor, you want to do doctor stuff, you want to inject people with 5 cc's of improvaline every 3 seconds, that's your prerogative. So you create your doctor. But in the scene where we need to create an SPC, it's a starship combat. A doctor is not really useful on the bridge during starship combat, so you are creating a tactical officer, or the helmsman, or perhaps a science officer who can scan the other ship. You are being pushed out of your comfort zone of creating a character type, and you're being forced to create characters that you wouldn't normally create, which I think is brilliant. Not only do you start to get to see, yeah, well, this is what they do. This is the kind of roles that I'm making. This is the mindset that I need to be in. But you're also creating characters that you are allowed to go, you know what, I've never played an angry character before. So now I'm going to create an angry character to fill this SPC role who's just, they're angry. They're angry about stuff. You can explore it in a safe space, because if that SPC is just not to your liking and you're like, yeah, I created that SPC, I don't like him, that SPC simply gets transferred off the ship. Goodbye, so long, farewell. And you get to make a new SPC. Number 5 is allowing you to explore character builds that you wouldn't normally explore, to take traits that you wouldn't normally take, to do stuff that you wouldn't normally do. Kind of like number 4, but different. Here you can actively go, okay, cool, I want to see what this combination is like. I want to try and use this build. I want to focus more on these attributes than on these attributes. What if I created a character who was terrible at their job, but was in the role anyway? Read the room. You don't want to create a completely incompetent character who's going to destroy the scene for everybody else, but at the same time, you are now free to explore stuff that you've never looked at before, and that's awesome. Number 6. 6 is a little bit of a stretching of the values of SPCs, but at the same time, I don't think it is. It fills up the starship. So often, when we are playing role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons or Star Wars or anything along those lines, we're dealing with very small crews. It's just a little group of people. Usually it's just the number of players sat around the table. With Star Trek, starships have crews of dozens, perhaps up to 100. Now, you're never going to interact with all of them, but to make the starship feel like there are all of these people running around, having some SPCs literally doubles the number of characters at the table. So there's 4 of you, suddenly there's actually 8 characters that you can potentially interact with at any given moment. Well, technically 7, because you don't really want to interact between your main PC and your SPC. It gets a bit weird, you start to talk to yourself. The GMs do it all the time. So you could see it actually as being practice for being a GM. That's a secret hidden number. Additional number to this list. Wow, you could potentially use this as practicing to be a DM because you're not creating SPCs. Interesting. Number 7, and I will be talking about this concept later on in the threat video, which is coming up later on in the month or in early February. Something that SPCs give you is meta knowledge. Now, metagaming is a tricky subject, and I am not advocating for a moment that you should ever allow metagaming into your game. However, using metagame knowledge to heighten the tension of the current scene, that's a powerful narrative tool. So if your SPC is currently, I don't know, shipwrecked in a shuttle in the middle of a nebula, they're suffering. They're in a bad place. It allows you to do the exact opposite on the bridge with your main character. I'm sure everything's fine, Captain. There shouldn't be anything to worry about. Cut back to SPC. We're gonna run out of air in 5 seconds. We're all gonna die. It heightens the tension. And you, as the storyteller, because you are a storyteller when you're playing these games, you can heighten that and you can juxtapose that and you can utilize that. That's a great way of testing out story, drama, and pushing the limits of just how far you can take your characters. It's just great practice all round for storytelling. Number 8. It gives you someone to fall in love with. Now, I don't mean PC and SPC falling in love with each other. That's your own anyway. That would be weird. That would be lots of role-playing of yourself playing with your... let's move on. It does allow you, however, to create SPCs that other player characters can fall in love with. I don't mean... Get your mind out of the gutter. What I mean is, Chief Miles O'Brien was an SPC. He was an SPC in the Next Generation, but we fell in love with him. Keiko O'Brien, SPC, Next Generation. We started to love her, and the O'Briens. It was just such a lovely thing. They even had a wedding. I mean, it was just wonderful. Then, in DS9, they changed from being an SPC into being a player character. And what a wonderful journey that was. But the only reason why they did that was because we fell in love with Chief Miles O'Brien as an SPC. It was like, oh, cool, it's him. He does these weird and wonderful things. It's so much fun. So you can create SPCs that are truly adorable or that have some quirks that we really like about them. They might not be nice quirks, but they certainly are quirks that cause us to fall in love. And that makes the game feel a lot realer. Some basic rules. They recommend that you choose either or, your main or your SPC, to be in a scene and for the duration of the scene. Try avoid having PC and SPC from the same player having an interaction and a dialogue. They recommend against that. I do too, unless you're a competent role player and you really want to have fun with it. And you learn how to control yourself so you don't spend 10 minutes having a dialogue between these two characters going, ha 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 ha, because you might enjoy it, but the rest of the people at the table might not. So try and avoid that sort of thing. Any SPCs that are in a scene, but that are not controlled. So you have created a tactical officer and they're on the bridge. Your medical officer, who is your current active character, your main character, your PC, goes onto the bridge. Now, they can acknowledge, oh, hi, Bob, I see you're here, and Bob can go, and that's it. But they're uncontrolled. Then the situation changes whereby some combat starts to take place. Your main is your doctor, whilst the tactical officer is the uncontrolled SPC. Uncontrolled SPCs cannot take major actions. They can't act on their own. You're not asking the player, oh, you're in charge of this one, so you've got to play them both. It's not how it works. That would slow down combat altogether. SPCs can assist main characters, for sure. They can roll an assist. Anything that has a DN of +1 or above, so DN 1 or above, SPCs simply cannot do unless they are controlled or that they are given the direct command by a PC. Now, the direct command isn't a major action anyway, so the PC is taking a major action, tactical officer, fire on my behalf. I mean, it's a bit of a workaround, but certainly that's what you're allowed to do. The one benefit of having SPCs in combat is that if you are to take damage and there's a handy SPC around, the damage gets redirected to the SPCs. SPCs don't have any health to track, they simply take the damage, they suffer an injury, and they are defeated for the purposes of the combat. So that's super simple to keep track of. They're basically a one-hit meat shield. Another benefit of having SPCs, uncontrolled SPCs in a scene, is that any PC that is defeated, the player immediately jumps into the body of an SPC. So then they go from uncontrolled to controlled, and then they act and behave normally. So the player is still engaged in the scene and can technically save their own character's skin if they need to. And of course, you can always use uncontrolled SPCs as a trait. Well, there's 4 of us on the bridge, so I'm going to say we have the trait of outnumber. We outnumber the enemy, so the 4 of us should have an advantage on something to do with combat or with detaining or restraining this individual or intimidating this individual. The GM might go very well. You have the outnumbered trait, and that decreases the difficulty of any kind of intimidation rolls that you might make. So that could be quite useful as well. And finally, one of the advantages of the SPCs is that you can create this SPC, play the SPC for a while, and then, a couple of adventures later go, yeah, you know what, I think it's time. This SPC is requested a transfer to a different ship, and off they go. That does not mean that the SPC is now out of game, forgotten, thanks for playing, never remembered again. It allows you to then say, months later, oh, you remember Jack, who transferred off the ship? I want to reach out to Jack and see if Jack knows anything about these weird spatial anomalies. You've created a trait that now exists outside of game called Contact Jack, Scientist, or whatever. You created this wonderful little resource. It's a great callback. People will go, oh, I remember Jack. What's Jack doing? Oh, he's on the USS Crazy Horse, and he's doing this, and he's doing that, and da, 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 da. And now you have been very patient. It is time to introduce you to the additional crew of the USS Kent, although not everyone is happy to see them. Kill me now. Oh, it's not that bad. You don't have to interview them all. Hello? I'm the doctor. I have to do much more than just interview them. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I feel better. Thanks, Doc. You do? Oh, well, that's great. Yep. Your job is way worse than mine. As there were so many submissions, I had originally intended to create characters for each and every single one of the submissions, but I just don't have a year to do it all. So instead, here is our list of crewmen, and I have assigned them as best I could to the various divisions and things. Joining the command crew, we have Ensign Mayer, Ensign Marim, and Lieutenant Junior Lumol Progul. The science division of the USS Kent has really expanded, and it's great. It's wonderful. Lieutenant Commander Gemma Jackson, in charge of biology and exobiology. Vincent Cole, a half-brother to our Tanam. Targak Dagam. Sethi Krok. Ensign Kellen Cray. Dr. Niels Dubaru. Medical has also got some additional interesting characters who will be joining our Dr. Hiro, Commander Zevon, as ship's counselor. Nisia Adar Jilix Pormo Tulu. Operations has expanded with some interesting characters of various different species. I love it. Lieutenant Sobek, Kazji, Lieutenant Hines, Chief Petty Officer Godok Mog, Karik. Security has also gained some interesting characters. Check them out. Lieutenant Alexian Drake, Crewman Hannon. Then on temporary assignment to the USS Kent for a duration as yet unspecified, we have someone from the Diplomatic Corps, Tolavir Gawain. I was so impressed with all of the characters that you have submitted. The USS Kent has become a richer, more dynamic place. There are some characters that I absolutely cannot wait to meet, and quite honestly, I think this would be a great crew to watch. We need to see how the USS Kent evolves over time, but like any playing party, well, it just takes adventures. Anyway, thank you for your submissions. I really do appreciate it. And keep your ideas flowing and keep the conversations going in the comments down below. And as always, hit that like button. Until next time, all I can say is live long and happy gaming.